Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hey, welcome back to the Stepmom Side podcast. I'm your host, Alicia. And you can tell by the title what this one is going to be all about. When your partner won't step up, navigating stepmom struggles with stepkids and ours babies. This is something that has come up a lot recently, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in the stepmom side community, or even last week I spoke at a co-parenting success summit, and this was a question that I got about that as well. So, I just want to talk about why so many stepmoms face the frustration of feeling like their partner isn't stepping up when it comes to their stepkids and their ours baby, and how this can lead to stress, resentment, and confusion. Like, those are the big three things. So, the goals for this episode are going to be exploring why this happens, offering actionable strategies for coping and improving the situation, which is really hard, but you know what? I'm going to be here with you every step of the way, so we'll get it done. But before we dive in, I want to remind you that if you're struggling with these challenges, I'm here to help. Make sure that you sign up for the Resentment to Relief, a stepmom's guide to letting go waitlist at aliciacrasco.com/relief. And we will kind of talk about this in there as well. So, let's talk about why your partner might not step up with your stepkids. And you might think, like, that is really weird. Like, why would they not parent their own kids, right? But it's easy for your partner to feel like they're not doing enough for their kids, whether it's disciplining them or being emotionally present or helping with the daily care, or, they maybe have fallen into this routine of like, well, their mom has always, scheduled doctor's appointments or checkups or all of the things. And so that's not a box that I want to touch. So a few examples: disciplinary inconsistencies. Your partner might let the kids get away with things because he doesn't want to rock the boat or he wants to avoid conflict. Or maybe, my husband would say this too, like, they're only going to be here for X amount of days. I don't want to spend all of that time being angry at them, angry, air quotes, because he wasn't angry, but I was angry about all of the things that they're not doing or they could be doing or they should be doing, right? Could, would, should, coulda, woulda, shoulda, like the words that like every stepmom needs to like take out of their vocabulary. But so there's disciplinary inconsistencies. There's also emotional distance. Sometimes the bond isn't as strong because they don't get to see them every single day. So they don't feel the need to get involved as in like the day-to-day parenting, which like sounds crazy, right? Like, as the stepmom, I hear this from so many stepmoms. And like I said, it's come up so much recently in coaching that they're like, what the hell? Like, what do you mean you're not just going to like be involved? Another thing, avoiding conflict with the ex. Your partner might not want to step on the ex's toes or make the kids feel like they have to choose sides. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't want to make the kids feel like they have to choose sides. So I can completely relate to that. But about stepping on toes, it's going to happen at some point or another. So let's talk about why this happens to kind of piggyback onto like the fear of upsetting the dynamics. Some dads struggle to assert themselves because they don't want to rock the boat with the ex or upset the kids. They are afraid they might be perceived as too strict or unloving. And the too strict is probably going to come in because you are now on the scene, Miss Stepmom. And so before you, dad was fun. Dad let us do whatever the hell we want. And then now that Alicia's there, or now that Sarah's there, or now that Rachel's there, he's not fun anymore. It's not a free for all. We don't get to do whatever we want. There are rules, there are boundaries, and I don't like them, right? It's probably what your stepkids are thinking. There's also the co-parenting guilt. So there's often an underlying fear of alienating their kids, especially when it comes to their relationship with the ex, and this can result in inaction or reluctance to fully engage. So the fear of alienating their kids kind of goes in line with, now that you're here, maybe your partner's not as fun as they once were because now there's rules and expectations and boundaries and all of that. So now, like, their kids may not want to come to your house. Now they're like, I'm not going to go there because I have to do this, that, or the other. And I've talked about this before, but like, think of it this way. If you were at a job and you had a boss that let you do whatever the hell you wanted, whenever you wanted, and there was no like production that you actually had to do, there was no accountability. And then you had another boss that was always on your back, like micromanaging you, where are you going to want to be? Like, who are you going to want to work for? Personally, like if I'm really honest with you, I'm going to want the one that like lets me do whatever I want. That would be great. I know I need the one that's going to be like on me, like, hey, you've got a deadline, this is coming, all of the things. Like I prefer more structure and like routine. But same thing with your stepkids. They're going to prefer the house that is a lot more laid back, a lot more do whatever you want, a lot more friend-like with them. And I say friend-like with them in air quotes because a lot of times what I see happen is the dynamic is typically that the mom is like the disciplinarian and the dad is kind of like the fun one. And then so when parents get divorced and the mom stays as the disciplinarian and the dad is the fun one, it doesn't go so well when a stepmom shows up and makes those changes because then now she's the easy scapegoat. Like she's the bitch because she, changed all of these things. And then at some point, there's this flip of like where dad's house is a strict house. And I've talked about this before. That is not necessarily a bad thing because again, structure, routine, expectations, boundaries, like all of those things are really good things. Even if the kids prefer a lackadaisical approach, I would too. But then at some point, there's a flip where dad's house, they feel safe, secure, and know what's expected of them. But then at their mom's house, there's the switch of the dynamic of like it becomes more enmeshed. Again, this is not always, but I've seen this dynamic, and the mom is more concerned about being friends with them because she realizes that maybe she's losing, air quotes, the kids to the other house. And so it's just, so they almost are like ships that pass in the night and like they take each other's places, which is like super weird, but it happens. And so there's that co-parenting guilt of like where the dad is scared of alienating their kids and, doesn't want that to happen where they don't want to come over. I mean, I wouldn't either, but also we can't keep doing what we're doing. So the unclear boundaries, if roles aren't defined between the stepmom and the dad might not know how involved they should be in certain situations, especially with a partner who has already an established relationship with a stepkid. So if you come in and let's just do like perfect scenario, you guys get help before you get married and or maybe you don't even get married. You guys get help before you move in together. Let's start there. You get help before you move in together. Or if you're like supercharger, like you get help before you actually get serious with this guy. And like, okay, here are the things you need to do. Like lay out what is this going to look like in a day-to-day situation. Obviously, we can't plan for everything, but like we can have again the expectations, the boundaries. What is my role going to look like? And as the dad, like what are you going to do? Where do you want me to step in? All of the things. That would be perfect. That is absolutely not what happens. I would say 99.9% of the time, that's not what happens. Typically, people are like, oh, it's great. We fell in love. Yeah, he's got kids from a previous relationship. Like, how hard could it be? That's absolutely what I thought. And then comes in. So then it's you already have a relationship with the kids, whatever that looks like. Let's just say that you're the fun aunt or you're the cool cousin or whatever it is. And then now, like, you're pissed and you're frustrated because the kids get away with everything and you're like resentful. And then now you want to make changes and it's really awkward or it's really hard because here you've always been like this cool, fun person. And then now you're like an irritable bitch. And so it's like, how do we change that? How do we get to the other part? So having those unclear boundaries is really hard too. So, how to cope when it comes to like your partner not stepping up when it with your stepkids. One, have a calm, open conversation. Calm, open conversation. And I will tell you when you here's something that I say to the stepmoms that are inside the stepmom side community. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here because when it gets crazy, you can come here and unload everything about whatever's happened. And then you can get advice and support from other stepmoms that have been through it and they'll say, like, oh yeah, this worked or that didn't work, or, be mindful of this or whatever. But you can get all of that anger like out of your body and other people can see it, understand, and like we can talk through like whatever's going on. And then when you've had a chance to process and see what everyone else has had to say, then you can go to your partner and say, hey, I'm feeling this. Whatever it is. So start when you get to that point, you can have that conversation. Start by discussing your feelings and frustrations with your partner, but focus on solutions, not blame. So if you're multitasking, come back to me. Focus on solutions, not blame. Acknowledge their perspective. You might not agree with it, you might not like it, but acknowledge their perspective. But be clear about your need for support. Your partner is not a mind reader. They have no idea what you want. Even if you're like, oh, well, I flippantly said this one day. Okay, well, let's sit down and have a conversation. And when you have that conversation, I always recommend setting up a time and a place to have it. That way, your partner is not blindsided. So, again, be clear about the support you need, address your frustrations. And if you feel like it's getting heated, it's okay to say, hey, you know what, time out. I I'm really struggling. Like I have a feeling that I'm about to flip out. I literally have said this. I am about to flip out. I am so pissed. And I've literally said it like in this tonality because I've come to recognize like once I get to that point where I'm going to flip out, like every conversation that we're now going to have, or if we continue this conversation, it is not going to go well. So I will say, hold on, I'm at the point where I'm so pissed, I'm about to flip out. We need to pause this conversation and meet back in 2 hours, meet back tomorrow, whatever it is, like put a pin in it and come back to it. Because if you guys are end up yelling and screaming at each other, nothing is going to get solved. Nothing. Number two, create clear expectations. Work together to define what it looks like when he steps up. And I know you're probably thinking, Alicia, I didn't bring kids into this relationship. How is it that me, a childless or a child-free stepmom, somebody that does not have kids, is coming into a relationship with somebody that has kids, and I'm teaching them, telling them, instructing them how to parent? Are you kidding me right now? And I'm like, girlfriend, pull up a chair, let's swap stories. It's really maddening. So work together to define what it looks like when he steps up. Setting clear boundaries can ensure that both you and your partner know when and how to act, particularly in tricky situations. Something that might be helpful for you, your partner doesn't think is helpful, or something that they're doing that they think is really helpful for you, especially in a tricky situation, isn't helpful. And so it's just having those clear expectations. Hey, when things go sideways, this is what I need from you. Again, back to number one, where when I was talking about having a calm, open conversation. Be clear about what you need for support. Support looks different for everyone. Number three, practice empathy. Practice empathy. My husband would say to me, Alicia, you will get so many more bees with honey than you will with vinegar. And I was like, yeah, 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 I know, I know, I know, I know. Anyway, so like I was saying, and then guns blazing again. And he's like, did you totally miss what I just said? Probably. Yeah, I did. But understand that your partner may be dealing with guilt or fear. Again, like they don't want to alienate their kids. They're only here for so much time. So we need to make the best of it. So approach these conversations with curiosity and understanding and avoid putting them on the defensive. And you may have just laughed when I said that. Avoid putting them on the defensive because it sounds so easy. It's so like, I'm not trying to put them on the defensive. I'm just trying to say, hey, dummy, this is what you're doing is wrong, right? Well, like, that's not how we need to address it. But you just need to get out whatever it is, and they're not getting it. So if you approach it with curiosity, you can say, hey, you know what? I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Can you help me understand why this is happening? Can you help me understand why you're doing this? If you're asking questions, you're going to get a much better response than if you come in and you're like, you do this, you do that, you don't do this, you always do that, you never do this. That is an immediate defense, like warning sign that's going to come up for your partner. So, what to do? Find a middle ground. Find a middle ground. Like I said earlier, sit down together, create a parenting plan that works for both of you. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is going to be really hard to hear, but you need to find a parenting plan that works for both of you, and you might have to concede some things. I know, I know, I know, I know. I cannot believe I just told you that. But you, my friend, as the stepmom, from one type A stepmom to another, you might have to compromise. I cannot believe I just said that word to you. You might have to compromise. You might be like, I want this, and this, and that's it. I'm not here. That's not how this works. We're trying to find something that works for both of you. So there's no guesswork involved. And here's a few ideas of like what you might want to do. This maybe include being very specific about roles. What should be handled by your partner? What can be shared? And where your boundaries are. And it sounds so ridiculous. Like, what are we doing here? But here's the thing, it's kind of like the custody schedule or the parenting plan. Everything is laid out. So when it's good, like you can kind of whatever. But when it's bad, like you can go back and be like, hey, I told you, or we discussed, not I told you, that's what you would like to say. But hey, when we laid out our plan, we had decided that you would be in charge of the difficult conversations, or you would be the one that would be nagging the kids about X, Y, and Z, not me. So find a middle ground. Work on compromising. I can't believe I'm saying that word to you. Encourage consistent communication. Not constant, but consistent communication. Don't, again, assume your partner knows what you need or what you're struggling with. Keep the conversation going and revisit it as needed to ensure that you're both on the same page. If this is not, listen to me, my friend, this is not one of those things that you just like do and one time and we are good. Abso-freaking-lutely not. That is not the situation. So don't assume that your partner knows what you need or what you're struggling with. Please keep the conversation going and revisit it as needed to ensure you're both on the same page. I feel like I should repeat that like 5 more times, but I won't. So let's get on to the second part. Why your partner might struggle to step up with your ours baby. And I'm just going to ask you this. Why do you think that is? I'm going to pause here for just a few seconds and let you think about that. Why do you think your partner might struggle to step up with your ours baby? And I've heard stepmoms say, and I thought this too, they're getting a second chance at parenting. They're getting a chance to, right the wrongs or do better. Like, why wouldn't they? Girlfriend, I don't know. Everyone's got their ideas for what I have no idea. I have no idea why your specific partner is not stepping out for your ours baby. However, the challenge is that this is really tough for stepmoms, feeling like your partner isn't fully embracing your ours baby because maybe there's a lingering guilt towards the other kids or a sense of unease with the new dynamic. That might sound weird, but let me repeat that to you again. Your partner might be feeling uneasy or maybe like there's lingering guilt towards the other kids, but sometimes it's just the unease of the dynamic. So let's get into it. So, guilt about the other kids. Some dads struggle to bond with their ours baby because they feel like they're betraying their stepkids or their relationship with the ex. And I know that second part, like the relationship with the ex, sounds absolutely bonkers. Like, what do you mean they're betraying the ex? They started a family with them and now they're with me. Like, what is going on? And so in this sense, there might be that sense of duty or that sense of loyalty to the first family. So now let's get into like why they feel or why they might feel like they are betraying your stepkids, their kids. So the stepkids coming back and forth, right? Or maybe they live with you full time. But depending on the ages, your partner very well may feel like if they show emotion or preference to your kid, your like ours baby, that means that they don't love their kid, your stepkids anymore, which isn't true. And I know that sometimes it's hard to like wrap your head around, but it's the stepkids come back and forth where your ours baby gets their dad the entire time. And so there's that guilt of like, I see this ours baby all together or like all the time, but my kids from a previous relationship are only here every other weekend, a few hours a week, over the summer, whatever it is. And so then when they are there, they get preferential treatment, which leads me to my second thing. overcompensation up for the kids' needs. So trying to keep the peace, your partner might focus too much on meeting the needs of your stepkids, their kids from a previous relationship, leaving the baby or your shared child to like take a back seat. And I know that this happens so much, especially if there's an age gap with the kids. Like if you've got teens and like a baby or teens and a toddler, or like 5 or 6 years, or like let's say one is like really into sports and the other one's like not so much. It's easy for that other kid or whoever is in the sports, if it's like the kid from the previous relationship, your stepkid, to like take center stage and get everything while you're like, hey, what about me and our kid? Like, where do we fit in? So it feels so weird. And then sometimes this is kind of a stretch, but sometimes there's this fear of being an overbearing dad. They might be afraid of being too involved with a new baby, especially if they're worried about stepping on the ex's toes or overshadowing the relationship they have with their kids from a previous relationship. So back to like that age gap thing, if you've got teens and like a toddler or, like a younger kid, your teenage stepkids very well may remember what their dad was like when they were your ours baby's age. And even though like your stepkids probably aren't thinking about it, maybe they are, maybe they are not, your partner is. Like, oh, when, stepkid A was this age, I did this or I didn't do that. And then now that we have this ours baby, like I'm more equipped to do this or that. And so it's just like this weird dynamic. And I'm like, oh, why does this happen? But again, girlfriend, like pull up a chair, like I see you, I got it. So let's talk about why does this happen? Fathers might feel guilty about giving more attention to the ours baby, thinking that it will cause resentment with the stepkids or that it's a sign of favoritism. And here's the thing, your stepkids come and go. Again, if they're full time, this is a little bit different, but come and go. And I don't mean that like in a bad way. It's the reality of the situation. They're only there for a few hours a week. They're there every other weekend. They're there over breaks, whatever your schedule is. So there's a very good chance that your partner feels guilty about giving more attention to the ours baby, thinking that your stepkid is going to notice and think that that's showing a sign of favoritism, or I like this kid more because I'm married to Alicia and this is our family now. And so you're kind of just like pushed out. And that's not the case, but it doesn't negate the fact that there's a good chance that your partner thinks that. Or maybe their mom has also like insinuated that, and maybe your stepkids have started saying this. And so then it's like amplified or exasperated it in your partner's head. So again, when you have these conversations, approach them with curiosity and try to be understanding. A lot of empathy or a little bit of empathy goes a really long ways. So there's also the loss of the original family dynamic, and the addition of a new child sometimes can trigger insecurities or fears. I know that sounds crazy, or fears about disrupting the family dynamic, especially if they were very involved with your kids from a previous relationship. So this kind of played out for us. Um, both of my stepkids were very into sports when they were in high school. And so then when our daughter came along as a baby or as a young one, it was um it was kind of a dynamic that we had to navigate because my stepson now was with us full time and was very big into playing sports. And so then it was like, okay, well, we can't go to like a below, and not a below zero, that's complete exaggeration, but we can't go to a freezing football game. We can't sit out in the freezing weather with a baby. So what's going to happen? What does that dynamic look like? Well, my husband went to all of the games, and so he's just now like not gonna go because we have a baby. And I'm like, I would say you go. I obviously wanted to go too. We could get a sitter, and sometimes we did, but like you go, I will be home with the baby. And so it feel like I could see resentment building. I don't think this would have happened with my stepson because he's unbelievable and like completely understanding and super great. But I could see how there could be resentment of like, hey, you used to come to all of my games and now you don't because you've got this baby. Same thing with my stepdaughter. Like, she was in sports too. So, like, you used to come to all of these things and then now you don't because you've got this baby. Like, I could completely understand why resentment would build up. And so when you think about it, like, okay, what is your partner going through and what are they experiencing? And they also might feel a little bit overwhelmed, which sounds really crazy to say, but the birth of a new baby can be a massive emotional and logistical shift. Like I was talking about, who's going to the game, who's not going to the game. So your partner very well may be feeling stretched very thin, leading into leading to hesitation on like taking on more responsibilities with a newborn or with a young child. And if you're like, I feel stretched thin too. Yeah, I know. I hear you. That's why having these conversations about everyone's expectations or what everyone's role is going to be are so freaking important. When am I getting a break? When are you getting a break? When can we have a break together? Like, what is this looking like? We need to have a conversation. So let's talk about how to cope. Acknowledge the guilt, but focus on your family. So, as much as your partner may feel guilty, it's essential to prioritize your shared family. Reassure him that loving the new baby or ours baby doesn't mean that it's diminishing the role with, or the bond even, with his kids from a previous relationship. And, like I talked about earlier, like this sounds ridiculous. Like, why do I have to say this? Why do I have to do this? You want support too. So when you're struggling, you want your partner to be there as well, right? And you want them to be empathetic and you want them to be reassuring. So when they're struggling, you also need to do like model the behavior you want to see. Ugh, right? But like honestly, reassuring them is so freaking helpful. But supporting him also in bonding, encourage activities where dad can bond with the ours baby, but make sure it's balanced with moments where he can just maintain a strong relationship with his other kids. That doesn't mean like, okay, starting tomorrow, you're gonna have the baby or you're gonna be in charge of the ours baby. Such a weird like dynamic to say without like having like names that I made up for you. Like, oh, the ours baby is gonna be named this, and like the stepkids' names are gonna be that, and using those. So I'm like, okay, how am I framing this? But tomorrow at 2 p.m., you're going to be in charge of ours baby until 5 and all of things. No, that's not what we're going to do. You can't just like offload completely. That's not going to work, right? The overwhelm and all the things. But making sure that there's time together for everyone and everyone can be a part of it. Like you get time with ours baby, dad gets time with ours baby. Maybe your stepkids get time with ours baby. Maybe you actually schedule in time for you with your stepkids and not have your baby around or your ours baby. That might be an idea. That might be helpful too. Also, avoid guilt tripping. Another way to cope. As tempting as it may be, as tempting as it may be, avoid making your partner feel guilty for not being involved more. Instead, focus on the joy and positive aspects of raising a child together. It is so, so easy to say, oh my gosh, you never do this. You never do that. I'm the one that's always driving to the bus stop. I'm the one that's always driving to the appointments. I'm the one always making the appointments. You never do anything. You do blah, 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 all of the things, right? When we have these clear, concise, communicative conversations about what we need, about what our expectations are, about what our boundaries are, that's very helpful. But you want to focus on positive behavior. You want to reinforce that positive behavior. So, whatever it is that you see your partner doing, even sometimes if it's like something that's so fucking tedious that you're just like, why do I have to like appreciate that? Why? All you have to do is say thank you. Hey, you know what? I noticed that you cleaned out the garage. That's not a good example here. I'm thinking like my husband did that yesterday, but I'm thinking like, you know what? Thank you so much for driving them to school today. Thank you so much for taking to them to that appointment. Thank you so much for watching a movie with them, playing a game with them, whatever it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Or be reassuring, like, oh my gosh, you know what? I can see that so and so loves you so much. Be reassuring. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. So what to do to kind of like circumvent this? Create a plan, discuss expectations. So create a plan that outlines what each of you can contribute both as parents to your shared child and as individuals to the blended family. Outlines what each of you can contribute. I've said this 3 times now because I don't want it to be, okay, Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want me to do. Here's what I want you to do. Not that. What's feasible for the other person? What's feasible for your partner? What's feasible for you? We're going to discuss our expectations. What am I going to do? What are they going to do? Set aside quality time for the family. Dedicate time where your partner can bond with your ours baby without distractions. Also plan for him to connect with his stepkids or your stepkids to help balancing his attention. And this sounds ridiculous, but you can carve out that time rather than just being resentful and really pissed off that like they're not doing anything. You can say, you know what? Here's one way to do it. I at 4 o'clock am going to take a shower, or I am going for a run, or I am going to sit and read a book, or I'm going to whatever it is. You are in charge of ours baby at that time. But if you have these expectations about like what each of you can contribute, like hopefully you've laid out a plan. But then later tonight, after ours baby goes to bed, like let's play a game together, like the stepkids and us. Like there are ways for you to do this. And what I don't want you to do is to take this the wrong way and be like, oh, great. So now I've got more mental load to do. Like I'm just going to like plan out everything. No, 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 my friend. No, no, no. It's not what I want you to do. But having this conversation prior, like having that plan and setting those expectations and setting those boundaries early on is going to help you so much more. Lastly, reaffirm your role as a team. Remind your partner that parenting a newborn or a little one is a partnership and you both need to be in it together. It's okay to lean on each other for support, which might sound or feel weird to them depending on what their previous thing was. And I just want to say this. If at any point during all of this, you feel like you're bashing your head against a wall, or you feel like maybe bashing your head against a wall would get you better results, stop. Stop. I'm going to give you the out right now, and I'm going to say, if you feel like you're going to get better results doing something else, do. Because here's what you can't do. You cannot force a relationship with your partner and your stepkids. You can't force them together. With your ours baby, you can't force them together. You, my friend, can only do what you can do. You can only control what you can control, which is you, how you show up, how you love your ours baby, how you love your stepkid or stepkids, how you show up for them, what you are going to do. You can't make somebody else be friends or have a relationship with anyone else. That is not going to happen. And here's the thing, your stepkids will grow up, your ours baby will grow up. They will be able to look back on their childhood with an adult perspective. You can't make anyone do anything. What you can do, again, is just focus on you and what you can control. So the main points that we covered, understanding why dads might not step up with stepkids or the ours baby, how you can cope with these challenges through communication, empathy, and setting clear expectations. Clear expectations is definitely where it's at. Actionable steps to help you improve the situation and strengthen your partnership. But here's the thing, trust the process and continue to work as a team. You are not alone in this journey at all. You're not alone in this journey. If you feel like you're alone, come join us inside the Stepmom Side community, aliciacresco.com/community, and you'll be met with other stepmoms that get exactly what you're talking about. And if you haven't already, I did talk about at the beginning of this. If you're looking for more personalized support and advice on these kinds of struggles, go to aliciacresco.com/relief to get on the wait list for the revamp of Resentment to Relief, a stepmom's guide to letting go. And if you are feeling so inclined, send me a message on Instagram. I'm just at Alicia Crasco and be like, oh my gosh, you know what? Episode number 82, when you were talking about, my partner not showing up for the ours baby or stepkids, like really resonated. Here is my experience. Or, hey, you know what? I've got a question. Send it to me. I'm at Alicia Crasco on Instagram. But I will chat with you next week. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crasco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community,
which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world, and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.